Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to welcome you to Women's in African Power Increasing Connection series. My name is Ana Rojas, and it is a pleasure to be together with you. And I want also thank you for waiting on the line as we were experiencing some small technical difficulties, but it's all been taken care of. So we're very much looking forward to being able to share this webinar with you. So thank you again for tuning in, and thank you to Carol and Tabby, our panelists, for joining us in this webinar series. WiAP and its Increasing Connections webinar series are supported by Power Africa, which, as you may know, is a U.S. government-led partnership coordinated by USAID. Before we get started on with the webinar, I just want to quickly run you through some virtual housekeeping matters. For example, you may have realized that participants are kept on mute, and this is to ensure that there's to reduce the possibility that connections may fail and avoid disturbances. This is not meant to keep you quiet, quite the opposite. You will see that you have a chat box and function on the toolbox toward the left of your screen. So please do send your comments and questions throughout the webinar to our participants. My colleague Jamie Wen, who's helping us behind the scenes today, is going to be collecting your comments and questions. She's also in a position to help you if you're experiencing technical difficulties. So do reach out to her if you have questions at any time. The questions to the panelists will be addressed towards the end. So please do send them to us, and we will be making handouts available throughout the webinar. So also do keep an eye on the chat box section, because that is how we would share information with you. If you're tuning in today, I'm pretty sure you know WiAP and the fact that the network goal is to advance the role and representation of women in the energy sector in sub-Saharan Africa. And one of the activities that the network has designed to increase and provide the support to women is to support their career development. And this is one of the reasons why the webinar series has been developed. As you may have realized, today we are very excited because we're piloting an approach where leading women from the energy sector share their experiences on career development. And they will serve as an example of how to excel in this medium. Additionally, you would also have noted from the invitation that the network is providing the members with an opportunity to receive individual coaching sessions on the webinar's topics. Today is on personal brand and how you build your personal brand. So if you're interested, don't forget to register and send us your information. And the way we're going to go through today about personal branding is by hearing from two amazing women, Carol Tenkeo and Ntabi Segmosia, about their careers. And just before we get started, just a note that a personal brand is vital to your career, and build a personal brand can be difficult also. In this webinar, you will learn how to strengthen your personal brand. And this will be done on two sides. One is, of course, hearing from the experience of these two amazing women, but also you will hear them reflect on values, on perceptions and goals, and how this have helped them shape their own personal brand. If you are wondering what a personal brand is, or so that to ensure that we're all on the same boat at this moment, just to let you know that this is the way that people, women and men, market themselves in their careers. It is your reputation, and is the way that one tells people what they can expect from you. As we mentioned, information about personal brand is going to be shared with you during the webinar, not only by our panelists, but also during the chat box. And towards the end, you will receive a package with exercises so that you've not only heard about the practice and how it's lived by our amazing panelists, but also that you can reflect for your own gain. And if you haven't joined us, please do that and do follow us on our social media. And if you want to be part of the network, please do reach out to Denise Mortimer to the email that you can see below. Without further ado, I would really like to invite Carol Tankeo to, who's our first panelist. Carol, and I'll be very brief because we will much appreciate for her to share her career experience. But Carol, for you to know, is a senior urban environmentalist with over 20 years experience in the public and private sector. She has experience in several African countries and is the managing director of S2 Services, where she manages the gender unit. She works to raise awareness among African women on the importance of clean energy and developing strategies to make clean energy accessible and affordable to all African women. Carol is a member of several networks and nonprofit organizations, including the Women in Energy and Environmental Leadership and the African Leadership Network. On the academics level, she was an associate teacher for a master's program in geography and town planning at Douala University in Cameroon for 2 years. She was trained as an ecotoxicologist and biochemist in Canada before obtaining her master's degree in international project management and the École Supérieure de Commerce de Paris in France. Apologies if the accent is not appropriate. Carol, I know you're with us, and I hope you've received the message to share your screen. Let us know if you're ready.
Yes, I'm ready.
Carol,
hello, Anna.
Hi,
can you
yes.
see?
I cannot still see your screen. No, yes, now we can. This is amazing, okay. Carol. I see your lovely photo of you. So please do share with us because we're very much looking forward to knowing how you've revitalized and changed career paths and be a woman at the forefront in the energy sector.
Okay, thank you. Many thanks, Anna, for this kind introduction. And thank you, everyone who had made time to join us today. We are glad to have you on this platform. Thank you, of course, to Women in African Power for organizing this series of webinars, which help to build the professional skills of women in Africa energy sector. I am very honored to share this session with the extraordinary entrepreneur Tabisang Mozia. So as Anna said, hello ladies, I'm Carol Tankeu. I'm a senior urban environmentalist with over 20 years experience in public and private sectors. I am trained as a biochemist and ecotoxicologist too, and I'm also an expert in international project management. I've experienced in several African countries, and I am currently the Associate Director of Sustainable Services, which is a consulting firm in environment, renewable energy, and sustainable development located in Cameroon, where I am right now. I am based with my family in Nairobi, Kenya, and as Anna said, I manage the energy and gender unit of my company as well as the environmental assessment unit. Sustainable Solution, which is the company called S2, offers services, workshops, and trainings. We have been working on environmental and social impact assessment, development of the corporate social responsibility of municipalities, market assessment and feasibility studies, and right now we are supporting a financial institution to get the Green Climate Fund accreditation. As Anna mentioned, I'm pretty much involved in several African and international professional associations and networks. Among them, I'm a member of Africa Leadership Network, also a member of the Council of Women in Energy and Environmental Leadership, which is in Nairobi. I'm a member of the Cameroonian Association of Environmental Assessment, which is based in Yaoundé, Cameroon. I'm also a member of the Partnership of Women's Entrepreneurship in Renewables, which is based in Nairobi, and of course, a member of Women in African Power. Concerning my career, what I can say is that my shift of career from employee to entrepreneur was a major turning point in my career path. I had to reinvent myself and develop new skills, especially in marketing and sales. Since that, I became more proactive and more willing to go out of my comfort zone and take new challenges. What have I learned those last years is mostly the power of networking and what you get by sharing know-how, attending to conferences, events, and connecting also through different networks. For the past year, I became advocate of clean energy and youth empowerment, especially young women for sustainable development. So I think that's it for my brief presentation. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Carol. And as part of the new elements that we are piloting in our webinars, we want to introduce an interview style to the audience. So now that we know a little bit more about you as a professional, I want to start digging in a little bit more about you as a person and how you've developed the Carol brand. So I wanted to ask you about what is important to you. What are those values that you carry through your career and your professional life?
I would say that my main professional values are, first of all, authenticity, fairness, hard work, honesty, and what is very important for me is ethics.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on any of those aspects?
Yes, I would say that working in the African environment is pretty challenging, and the way people perceive things, and it's also sometimes a matter of standards. So I think it's very important to be driven by those values I've mentioned. And for me, it's important through my work to show my enthusiasm, my technical expertise, and experience that I have and that I've developed in different countries and projects in clean energy projects.
Mm-hmm. And Carol, if I may follow up then, this is what you would like to show, but also part of understanding the brand is how you are actually perceived by others. And I know you have already reflected on how others perceive you as a professional.
I think what is very important for me is being a dynamic, what I call mompreneur, which is at the same time I'm a mom and an entrepreneur. So it's really challenging to find the right balance. Huh? That's why I say mompreneur, which is, I think, very important. I also would like people to perceive me as a passionate professional in a male-dominated field. A work-dedicated person, but of course a caring person who likes to give back, which I think is very important, and a working woman supporting other women in this sector, which is not easy and very challenging especially for African women.
Thank you, Carol. I can see that there is quite a lot of attention on, of course, dedication, but also on bringing others together and fostering networking and relations that comes through as the perception of you. I see that you've already put out this light on what makes the Carol brand. So I just wanted to ask you if you could share with us not only what's on the bullet points, but also some reflections that you find interesting in terms of the brand.
I believe my personality is built on a combination of both. My strong home values, like the traditional African education, with all the safeguards, with all the strong values we usually have, both as a woman, strong values as a woman, strong values as a mom, and also as a human being. I was lucky enough and gifted enough to have academic studies, both first in Africa and then in Europe, in Canada. And I've been traveling across almost half of African countries and in different continents and working in different environments, which helped me building my brand. My work experience is in science field in 3 completely different African environments, which is Central Africa, East Africa, and North Africa, has really been enriching. And I think it helps me a lot to adapt to different environment and different kind of situation. And I will finish by saying that my best quote is knowledge is power. I love everything about continuous learning, knowledge sharing, and growing.
Okay. Well, Carol, thank you so much for sharing your brand with us. And I want to ask you then, because as part of building a brand, there are also objectives for growth, and you want to present to others what is the path that you as a professional want to walk. Could you please share with us what those are?
You're talking, sorry, you were saying that you wanted to know what is the next step, the path?
Yes.
Okay, in fact, I'm visioning myself in 5 years. What I'd like to be in 5 years is a trainer for renewable energy workshop session in Africa. I would like to be also an author of at least a book. I would like to be mentor of at least 20 young women, not only African women, but women in the energy sector. My other goal is also to be a board member of major Pan-African or international organization. Of course, being a keynote speaker for gender-related events in Africa, it's critical for me. I think it's very important to share with other African women all the opportunities in the green sector and especially in the energy field. And of course, I would like to be a role model in Cameroon as a professional in renewable energy field and a role model in women in renewable energy in Africa.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Carol, I can understand why you were surprised because, of course, I just immediately jumped into asking you for the future without asking really to dive into what you have achieved through your studies, through your tenacity, your network building, and also adapting to us 3 different countries and the way they work.
I would say as achievements, the last major one, it was unlocking a new market and bringing more opportunities from East Africa so far in 2018. We are also happy to claim key roles in some major assignments in Cameroon first and in sub-Saharan Africa as a consultant for organizations like Africa Development Bank, European Union, World Bank, GIZ, and Dutch Corporation. And the most exciting is the upcoming publishing of biofuel policy recommendations for Cameroon with the support of German Konrad Adenauer Stifter. The official launch is scheduled in August. So I could say those are my major achievements.
And you've also done some quite unique things through your work, haven't you?
Yes, I can humbly say that I am, first of all, a co-founder of a company in a male-dominated field as an entrepreneur. In my previous career in Cameroon, I'm proud to be among women who broke through the glass ceiling in the public sector in a municipality where I spent 7 years. There, I was the first woman appointed as Chief of Department of Environment and Livelihood at the Douala Urban Council in 2010. I was also the first woman appointed as a Deputy Director Town Planning and Environment at the Douala Urban Council in 2009. And before that, I was awarded Best Female Manager at the Douala Urban Council in 2008.
Thank you, Carol. You've had an impressive career so far, and it's nice to know that you want to continue on that path. I am hoping, and I'm very sure that our audience would like to ask you more about your brand and about perhaps experience in other countries and how you've adapted your brand, but I'll leave that to them. And I would like to now transition slowly, but steadily to our next panelist, Intabi Sengmosia. Intabi is the CFO and co-founder of Azimuth, that's known locally in Sierra Leone as Easy Solar, an innovative leading distributed energy services company, or a DESCO, that finances solar products to off-grid houses and small businesses across the country. Azimuth makes clean energy affordable for low and middle income consumers by offering solar powered devices on a rent-to-own financing structure enabled by a pay-as-you-go technology and mobile money. A South African and Ghanaian dual citizen, Intabi is a Pan-African at heart. She's passionate about building homegrown solutions to the continent's most present development challenges. And her love for the continent has brought her to work and live in numerous countries across Southern, Eastern, and West Africa, including Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Malawi, and most recently in Sierra Leone. Intabi holds a master's in energy finance and policy from Columbia University and a bachelor's in finance and economics from the University of Cape Town in South Africa. Intabi, it's a pleasure to have you with us, and we're very much looking forward to knowing what drives you and helps such as young and powerful women to be also at the forefront in the energy sector.
Great, thank you so much, Anna, and thank you everyone for joining. Thanks so much to the Women in Africa Power Network for inviting me to speak and for hosting this webinar. I think it's a really important topic. And thank you so much for Carol for that amazing presentation. Your work is very inspirational. Thank you for sharing in us your journey and how you've come to build your brand. I think it's a really exciting topic, just before I start, because I don't think it comes naturally to brand ourselves, especially as women, and it can feel a little bit inauthentic. But what I've come to see it as is ensuring that the way you come across, so in what you do and how people see you, is aligned with your values. And so I think it's actually one of the most authentic ways of living and working. So a little bit about me. So I'm a Ghanaian South African citizen, as Anna mentioned, and I'd summarize my personal statement as someone who's transforming the landscape of energy in Africa through innovative solutions that lie at the nexus of fintech, solar, and last mile distribution. And how I'm currently delivering on this statement is that I am the CMO and acting CFO of Easy Solar, a company I co-founded in 2016, whose mission is to enhance the lives of communities across West Africa through easy and affordable access to energy, energy that empowers them to live freely, play passionately, and pursue their ambitions confidently. And how we're doing this is that we do it through an innovative business model called pay-as-you-go solar. And what that means is we distribute high quality solar products on a rent-to-own financing basis enabled by mobile technology, and we distribute it through a network of agents and retail outlets. So really the company is about more than energy. So definitely, like, you know, we talk about women in African power, but my company lies at the nexus of fintech, energy and distribution. And so the problem we're trying to solve is one of energy access. Sierra Leone has one of the lowest rates of electrification globally. About 90% of people don't have power. And we are coming in and bringing high quality solar PICO systems. But because most people can't really afford a $100 to a $200 home system, we offer financing where we can turn a system on and off remotely, thereby allowing people to pay in small installments. And we really are going the last mile. We're in about 11 out of the 16 districts in Sierra Leone and looking to expand to Liberia and Guinea. And we've reached 60,000 people to date, not just in urban areas, but really going the last mile across the country. And it's really about building relationships. It's not just selling energy or, you know, plopping a solar home system onto a roof. It's really about changing the narrative of service, energy service in countries which either people don't have them, or where they do have them, it's quite unreliable. So I'm going to stop using the pronoun we, because this is a seminar on personal branding. But I do want to acknowledge that while I built this company from the ground up, you know, everything I'm achieving now, or the company is achieving now, is because of the remarkable work of my team. So we have over 100 employees in Sierra Leone and agents who are working really hard in Sierra Leone to achieve our mission. So I think it's almost more natural for me to use we, but from now on, I'm going to use the word I. And so I think beyond what I have built in Sierra Leone through the company, what I actually realize is a byproduct of kind of being an African woman, young, in this sector, is that there's not a lot of us. And so in addition to kind of spending time on the ground doing the core work, I've also really enjoyed my role as a person who's changing the narrative of what it means to be an entrepreneur in the sector. And that means sharing stories and representing the company in external forums. And really, I think beyond that, I think it's been really exciting as well to feel like I'm leaving a legacy along the way. It's also, putting the slide together was quite difficult for me, also because I think as women, we tend to try not to self-promote or kind of a little bit shy about embracing success. But I do think, you know, the core work that you do, there are different byproducts. One is that you may be, you know, representing yourself in different forums internationally, changing narratives, but also leaving a legacy for, you know, young girls who look like you, who may not necessarily believe that certain things are possible for themselves. And so these are just some of the summary of things that I didn't really believe I could achieve probably 10 years ago. But it's possible if, you know, you work hard and put your mind to it. So just to summarize, before we get into the specific questions, I have a few lessons that I've learned along the way, I think, in what I have come to believe is my brand and what I think drives me. I think the one is I knew my values really early. So I think know who you are and craft your life to be a reflection of that. And even if it's not popular, just go for it. I think second of all, be intentional. So I think it's very important to lay out what it is you want to achieve. But especially if you're going into entrepreneurship, it's hard work. There are going to be times where you question why you're doing this, but you know, being pragmatic and going the full mile is really important. Another lesson is that entrepreneurs are problem solvers. So, you know, one thing I really love about being part of that cohort is that we see suffering and strife as a character building exercise. And so, you know, if you see something and you, whether it's you personally or somebody else is experiencing it, maybe, you know, that could be a potential solution. And then the last is really, I think, what has driven me and what I've found has helped, especially being a member of a demographic that's really underrepresented, is to seek role models and like-minded people. So my personal favorites are Madam C.J. Walker and Wangari Maathai. But I think if you are interested in learning about amazing women, there's a podcast called The Story, and it chronicles unknown backstories of people who changed the world. And season 1 is actually just about 9 women who you may have either seen their brands or seen them, but it's really interesting to hear their backstories. So I'm going to stop there, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ntabi. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. And I think it really resonated with me, but also because we're getting questions and comments with the audience, the fact that you're reflecting on how we women do not seem to think about our brands and do not self-promote, and how important that is. So we were just receiving a comment along those lines of how interesting it is to listen to you and to Carol in the reflections personally. So we're happy to be able to already be making some show to have you and Carol show the way to others. As I'm going to start my questions to you, I just also want to encourage others to do the same, because the more vibrant the conversation. And Tabby, I just wanted to see if you could dive a little bit more about your values, because you were mentioning that you had found them pretty early in your career, if not before. So if you could share with us what's the core of them.
Yeah, so I mean, I think kind of starting off, my passion for energy came out of a frustration rather than sort of a thing that I thought early on I wanted to do. When we were, I think about 10 years ago, or maybe a little bit more, there was load shedding in South Africa, so rolling blackouts. I was finishing up my high school exams, and South Africa is not really built or created for that kind of situation, because we all just assume we have access. And so I remember actually like studying by candlelight, and my mom cooking in the kitchen by candlelight, and just thinking, wow, when you don't have energy, you really realize how important it is. And I think one of the things professionally was also realizing how important energy is from a systemic point of view. And so, I think my professional sort of breaking point was realizing that you can't talk about development in Africa until you talk about the foundation of any modern society, which is energy. And so I think because I had that personal experience, and then I had experiences while I was working, that just made me feel I couldn't do anything else. And kind of talking to my values and my guiding principles, I've always loved this continent. I think it's gone through a lot of hardships over the centuries. But there are gems, not just underground, but all over if you look for it, in the people, in the old histories. And I think really like we're just on the verge of seeing what will happen if Africa's full potential is unleashed. And yeah, so that was always a big part of what I wanted to do something for Africa and find out what is the mission of my time and how can I contribute. I think a few other values, which I'll kind of talk through quickly, is, my dad was a freedom fighter in exile during the apartheid regime, and, raised me to believe that you should leave the world a better place than how you found it. And just grew up in a house where the question was never what can I get, but how can I be of service? And so anytime I was in a kind of formal, so I was in management consulting and, have a background in finance, but I felt like it was a skills building exercise, and I knew I would like figure out, and if I trusted and was authentic, I would figure out that how I can be of service bit. And yeah, combined with a very ambitious attitude and a little bit unconventional, I ended up in Sierra Leone doing off-grid solar company. So I think it's a combination of interesting traits, but also values that have guided me.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. It's amazing to listen to your story and to hear from your values. And I also want to ask you about how are you perceived, or how do you think you are perceived by others? Because one is, where you stand, and the other is what you're reflecting to others.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is also a really tough question, I think to answer, because it feels almost a little bit presumptuous. But I think if I was to describe what I was doing, how other people see me, the one thing that I think it's part of it, interestingly enough, part of it is some of the insecurities that drive me on a daily basis. Like, am I actually showing what it is that really I want to be? And so part of it is like being quite young, being a woman, being an African woman, and anytime I'm around other co-founders in my sector, they don't look like me, and so changing that narrative from, oh my gosh, what am I doing here, to actually African woman, young African woman can do it too. And then, I think part of that is just breaking barriers in what I do, and also in the narrative. And I think how I would like to be seen, I think anytime I talk, I think hopefully my passion comes through. And I think sometimes mission-driven people can seem a little bit serious and self-important. So I think both mission-driven and creative and playful, because it's a really important part of who I am. And then definitely empowering other women, just because, I think to reach a critical mass, we have to pull each other up and support each other and lean on one another. And then, honest, courageous. Courage is a big one, because it takes guts to do this, and to be quite far away from home doing this. And the last one actually came from some friends back home who, when they were talking about what I was doing, and would tell other people, even if they didn't understand the nitty-gritty of what pay-as-you-go solar and all the rent-to-own financing jargon, they would be like, oh yeah, my friend is lighting up Africa, which I kind of liked. And I think that's like a little tagline that I'm gonna own.
And you should. I think it's a brilliant way of describing you and your work. I want to move forward as to learning about what makes up your brand. So if you could share that with us too.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, number one, I'm a Pan-African woman. That is like the foundation of who I am, and it has driven me to do what I'm doing. I think in the beginning I spoke about my personal statement, and I'm just going to highlight certain words in that. So transforming. So what I mean by transforming is both in the work that I do, and as I was saying, what it means to be an entrepreneur. So I realize that the primary purpose or the primary equity in my brand is doing good work, and doing good work for off-grid communities in West Africa. That is the foundation of what I'm trying to transform. I think that it's a human right that every child should have high quality energy. I think anybody who wants to start a business should not be constrained by something as basic as light that we were figuring out and getting right back in the 19th century. Secondly, the transforming means what I think I've spoken about it quite a bit in terms of the narrative. The next part I'd like to highlight is innovative solutions. So that's my approach. So I think, how am I transforming? I'm doing it through a dynamic, high growth, innovative approach. And so I'm not like, I mean, it's very specific. I think the private sector is a really important ingredient in the development story in Africa. I think we need to combine the solutions, both public and private and non-profit, but I'm really interested in responding to customers, responding to changes in technology, responding to the market, like from an economic perspective, because the price curve of solar is going down so much that it's so affordable now to deploy an off-grid system and get people tier 1 energy. And the last is the nexus of fintech, solar, and last mile distribution, and that's just the expertise. So those are the areas. So, I have an academic background in finance, and really have thought fintech is really interesting. Mobile money is one of those things that Africa has been able to export and be ahead of the curve. So I think we should continue with that. Last mile distribution, nobody's really gotten it right. And getting it right in a country like Sierra Leone, I think will really help strengthen my brand. And then, solar, because, it is the first source of energy, like the foundation of all of life. So why not be renewable and not, mess up the environment for future generations.
Thanks, Ntavi. I want to ask you then now to share with us what you have achieved with your personal brand. Where has it taken you?
Yeah, sure. I think the number one thing is sticking it out. So being true and having some kind of statement means that 2 years later, after doing this crazy thing that nobody understood after grad school, I'm still here. And so I think that's a sign that something about it is working. But in terms of specific kind of big ticket things, so we've raised almost $2 million in funding in less than 2 years. We've reached over 50,000 households, and our goal as a company, and my personal goal is to say 1 million people in West Africa have achieved energy access because of my work. I've established a women's network in the company, developing a mentorship program. So from, agents who are commission-based and out there in the field to leadership, people feel that they can progress. And I think that, there's a pretty low level of employment, and I think women feel like they don't have opportunities here in Sierra Leone. And so that's something I'm really proud of. And then, I guess more of like the external big ticket things, which was pretty exciting, was being named one of the 100 most influential people in South Africa. Don't ask me what they mean by influence, but apparently somebody's watching. And then, being featured on Forbes as one of the young entrepreneurs to watch this year, under 30, which was quite exciting as well.
It is. And there's no way that I can follow that, except to ask you, where do you think your brand is going to take you?
So I definitely want to continue doing what I'm doing, and I had the target of 1 million people, but I think that's more of a company thing. So as an individual, my real passion, I think without education and without exposure, talent just lies buried in the ground. And especially coming, I think, from a country like South Africa, realizing that access to opportunity is so important. So for me, a passion in 5 to 10 years, what I'd like to start doing and putting together is building an accelerator program. So one of the things that helped me shift gears and change my mindset, because I didn't go into, I don't think ever, I grew up believing I could be an entrepreneur. It was something that I had to learn that was possible for me. And I think it's an ecosystem that really I see lacking in places like Sierra Leone. I think it's starting to develop in Nairobi and Ghana to a certain extent. To develop an accelerator program where, starting from university, but maybe even a little bit earlier, young girls are given the opportunity to develop business ideas, pitch to, high value and high net worth individuals or investors, and have access to funding to develop those ideas. And even if those ideas fail, I think failing is good. I think it's more of just creating this culture. Like that's really what I want to see, this culture that I've had to learn over time, in that it's okay to just go for it. Like it's fine. And having the environment that supports you, that's really what I want to be a part of. So whether it's like a fund or an accelerator program, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm already starting to kind of develop networks and people to start to put that together.
Okay, well, thank you, Ntabi. It's been lovely listening to your story, and I need to thank you and Carol for the honesty and for also, I think it takes a lot of courage to have this very open and personal conversations with an audience, and we're receiving very good feedback. A couple of things before we move forward with the Q&A, which will start just now. Because we received so many questions, I wonder, Ntabi and Carol, if you wouldn't mind staying online a little bit more longer than we had anticipated, and for our audience too, because I do think there is a lot of richness in the conversation that's going to follow. So if it's okay to stay in line. And Jamie, if you could perhaps, thank you very much, allow me to share the screen. Okay, and now I wanted to, before going into the Q&A, just mention to all of you that Ntabi was mentioning a series of podcasts, and my understanding is that Jamie has already shared the link to it. So if you go to the chat room, chat box, you'll be able to see it. Carol, I wanted to start with you and to bundle two questions in one, because you made, of course, reference to the fact that you have changed careers. And the questions are, one, what brought you to changing career paths in the energy sector. And while you did that, if you could, if there were any skills that you needed to support you in doing these changes.
Yes, Anna,
Carol?
those are two. Yes, I can hear you, Anna. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I was saying that those are two interesting questions. The first question I will answer simply in saying what made me change is my career is, as we say, life. We had, with my family, we had to move from home, which is Cameroon, to Morocco for new professional opportunities. And that's why I had to quit my first job and see how I could reinvent myself. So I would say that I never pictured myself as an entrepreneur. I was, I would say, a scientist or a technician working for the government. And it never crossed my mind that one day I would shift and being an entrepreneur. Why did I take that decision? It's because going from home, moving to a new country, and with the new professional opportunity of my husband, we had to be traveling and moving from one part of Africa to the other every 3 or 4 years. So in my mind, it was not a question of looking for a job and just start a new job and then quit and had to do all over again. So for me at that time, the major question was, what do I do now? What are my skills? Is it an opportunity for me to go out of my comfort zone and try new challenges? And that was my decision. At that time, I didn't know if I had the skills. The only thing I knew it was I needed to challenge myself and I needed to develop the skills and I needed to learn. I hope it answered part of the question.
I think it absolutely does. Thank you. Carol, as I have you also on the line right now, I also wanted to ask you to reflect on another element of your presentation, which is that you mentioned that you see a lot of value on participating in women's networks. And I just wanted to know if you could expand a little bit more in terms of what is actually the value that you see in this networking. What strikes you as important?
I think what is the most important, as Tabby said, we need, and I totally agree with her, we need more role models as women. I mentioned that my East Africa experience in the energy sector was very enriching because it was the first time that I was meeting so many brilliant young women in the field. I was used of working, attending to all the kinds of events, conferences, workshops, really male dominated. And for the first time in Nairobi, I attended to so many events organized by women in the sector. And this is what we need in Africa. As young women, we need more role models in order for us to know that it is possible to be a woman in that field or in that sector.
Thank you, Carol. And I want to build on that and ask Tabby if she wants to further elaborate perhaps on the value of networking and role models, because I know that's something that's definitely shaped the way you work and the way that you position yourself in the sector.
Yeah, so I think there's like a quote, which I'm going to paraphrase, but if you want to go fast, go together. If you want to go slow, go by yourself. But definitely paraphrasing and butchering it. Yeah, but I think going it alone is really tough. And I think we are social animals, and it's very hard to imagine something as possible for yourself if you don't see it, right? So I think part of it is just moving through your career and thinking about the next step, knowing that somebody else has shattered that ceiling or has gone through that experience, and can share and hopefully like help prevent mistakes or challenges that they experience along the way. Because I think, you know, part of it is also clearing the path for people who follow you. I think also it's just really inspiring as well to hear about women doing it. I think we just grow up and are inundated in the media with big men doing big things, and it's just really an inspiring thing to yeah, for me at least, when I go to these kind of events, I just absorb and I'm in awe of, you know, women, especially, I mean, Carol was saying she's a mom entrepreneur. You know, the idea that there's sort of this notion, can I have it all? But, you know, women who juggle having kids and also like their career and asking them how they've done it. I think it's, yeah, just really inspirational in addition to like helping you craft your career and think about the next step.
Thank you. I have a question that I want to share with you, and it's related to transitioning and growing. I'm going to read the question. It's, how did you manage to transition from working independently as a freelancer, let's say, to recruiting your first staff and growing as a team? How did you measure control and the risk and controlled the risk involved? Do you remember that moment when you started hiring people?
Is that a question directed to me?
Yes, yes.
So yeah, so I think it's been an ongoing process. So kind of when you're starting something off, you go from being a doer in chief to like a manager or a leader in chief. And there's definitely a lot of lessons to be learned along the way. And in terms of control and risk, I think part of it is actually just being very clear about defining the roles that you want in the organization and being very clear about the profiles you want, but then also like being willing to let people learn along the way. And so, you know, our first couple of hires, you know, didn't work out, and then we iterated and we learned about, you know, how to think about a JD, how to think about the recruitment process. So actually like setting up a pseudo HR function, and then putting in place, you know, those controls and thinking about the risk as you were mentioning. So I think it's, yeah, definitely like a learning process, and it gets easier the more people you have on board. And I think also being very clear about the corporate culture you want to build, because I think as, you know, co-founders, you're very clear about the mission and you built it up from the ground. But then, you know, having other people buy into your culture and what you want to achieve is a completely different thing. And also realizing what drives people. And so I think it's that you know, sort of like balancing act between really like valuing your employees and valuing the people you bring on. But also defining what the organizational values are. I'm not sure if that's a clear answer to your question.
I think it is. Thank you. And Carol, I want to invite you now to unmute yourself, if you could. I have a question to you from Karine, who's from Cameroon, and she would like your advice for a young Cameroonian lady who intends to venture in the energy sector. And how do you think branding in Cameroon can be different from doing that in other parts of Africa or the world at large? Carol, do you have any thoughts on that? Carol, I don't think we can hear you.
Oh, is it okay now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. No, sorry. I was saying that I'll try to answer. The Cameroonian context is quite different and quite complex for several reasons. One of the reasons is that we are a bilingual country, but with a French-speaking majority and English-speaking minority. So it's more, I would say, a French-dominated mindset. So the notion of branding is, or personal branding is quite new. It's quite new. So, but things are changing. You have a lot of young entrepreneurs who are changing completely the ecosystem, who are changing the visibility of all what's happening, all the wonderful initiatives, all the projects, all the startups that are in the country. And I would advise her to start, first of all, to read about personal branding, to benchmark what's happening in other countries. And the first step is what she's doing now. She's attending to this webinar. So I hope she will learn and she can practice what she's learning. And I will encourage her to persevere. It's a matter of perseverance because it's new. I hope I answered.
And I hope that the network, and this is a two things we wanted with you. That if you're or options develop and about brand ability, the sort of you need to do let us know and feel also in the that is going to be shared by us soon. So Africa to support Africa. We can share a link if you're interested, because our in programs more. If you do the link you the chat, and I want to Harold and afterwards that'll be also. But there is a very specific who qualifies as an introvert. How or could someone who is an introvert a brand will easily affect others people's opinion? And I want you could wait in case on how to go.
I'm not sure. Yes, sure. I'm not sure the question.
Let's read it. It says, yeah. Someone who is established a brand, someone who is affected by other people's opinion.
Okay, that's a question. Maybe I can a little bit of my experience. I don't know if it's going to. I'll say that I was very shy, and I was talented and used at the in the back office, as they say, and you really have to learn how to out of your life, and especially professional is. And the more you get responsibilities, you have new things. I'm going to give you a simple example. Like Douala Council, at one point, they asked to radio and interview. And the step was me talking on television. I was not prepared at all for that. When it for work reasons, you have to go deep in yourself and for the resources. We have so many hidden skills, I would say, as women, achieve so many things, but sometimes we are not prepared, and we need and mentoring. This is why I find very important supporting, coaching and mentoring young. It's not easy. And that's my.
And any words of some advice as to how with the comment from others and how that the way that you present yourself?
It's difficult for everyone to like you. You'll find, and hopefully for you, a minority of people who will disagree or who will not like you, but you have a barrier. Sometimes those criticisms, all those negative things can help you to achieve, can help you to grow. And but the thing is life, and you have to get used to it, see how to deal with it. It doesn't have to affect too negative. To take it down and deal with it. The advice I
Thank you. Tabby, I want to invite you also to your thoughts, if you have, with regards to this.
Yeah, no, actually, like, it's an amazing question because I introvert, so I've done one of the Myers-Briggs ones and pretty far scale. And yeah, I agree that it's some tough forward and to yeah, just position yourself and build a brand, because sometimes being inauthentic. I found, and I think I'm going to echo what Carol was saying, number one, keep doing what makes you uncomfortable, because you learn that way. But that, like, figure out what and what you value, and if you can action of those things, it's much more important than use, right? So what I mean by that is, for me, I always found there were certain things when I did them, I felt this really strong sense of confidence. Nobody could take it away from me. And so even when people like negative things, or I found it to be like a way to improve on this one is mine. Maybe there's actually opportunity and room for growth. And I think actually it's good. I read a book the other day where the author was saying no is an answer, but regret always a what if, right? And if you keep thinking, well, what if, what will they say? You never actually get an answer because you don't try. But if you try and you get it doesn't really hurt that much. So I think echoing what Carol was saying, there's times when didn't expect to be either or like on a phone where other people were seeing me. I'd always start up and say, okay, I'm, because they want me to be, which means I have something to say. And definitely the biggest learning point for me was like pitching to investors. That was ways, and I still get nervous every time I have like a call with somebody who I can figure out one day that I'm a fraud. But I figure if they're still calling, they still want to, it must mean because I'm not, and there's something that they want to hear. So I think it's really finding what you're good at, trusting, and then not being afraid, and trying anyway, because what happens is that it doesn't work out or something bad, right? So.
Thank you both for the honesty in your answers, and again for the of sharing and and seeing it in your names. I'm very sure that is very responsive because I see the numbers remain consistent when we started. So thank you. I have a couple of questions before we close, so perhaps I can do to be brief in the answers. One is, and this is a very interesting one, and Intabi, I ask you to get this first. What do you think? Is it more helpful to brand yourself more broadly in the energy space or more broadly, particularly that there is a very reduced number of women in this?
That's a great question. I think it depends on what you want to achieve. So I think there is value in being known for being really good at something. I think if you're at a point where you found kind of where you can provide value and grow and in here, I don't think that it hurts to have. I think actually it's quite valuable to make your branding statement quite specific. At the same time, I think, you know, if you you know, want to have a wide impact, potentially leave options, be appealing to a wide audience. I think one of the biggest questions probably is, what's your audience and what are you trying to achieve? And if the answer to those are that you want by a lot of people as a particular, and probably leave it a little bit more broad. I don't know specific in that, like, there are those three industries, but yeah, depending on who your audience is and what you want to achieve, craft it like that.
Thank you. Carol, if you the same question, what do you think may be appropriate, or what are your thoughts in, you know, zooming into one specific aspect of the energy sector or doing it more broadly?
As Tabi was saying, I totally agree with her. It really depends on your audience or your target. I would say that in my case, as a consultant, we have to go. The energy sector is wide. You have solar, you have wind, you have geothermy. So it really depends on our clients, the needs of our clients. That's why we need to go more wider instead of being specific.
Thank you. And the final question that I have, very specific to utilities, but I'm just going to put there, and if any of you wants to jump in, please do. It says women are very represented within the power utilities. Do you think that this is linked with the problem of access to energy or working in the energy sector, or what could be done to increase women's representation in the power utilities? Have any thoughts or reflections on this before?
Yes, I do. Can I try to answer?
Yes, of course, Carol. Go ahead.
Okay. It's very interesting, but I think that we have to start right now. We are conducting a study on gender issues in the energy sector, and we found out that there is less than 10% of women in, let's say, 20 African countries. Less than 10% of women having position in the energy sector. And what was interesting also to find out that there's only less than 2 to 3% of women in charge of energy. I think that it's due to, first of all, the academic background. How many women do we have trained electrical engineers? How many have as? So we need to encourage young girls, first of all, to get involved, pursue studies in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And then the next to guide them. You can find professionals at a high level or high positions. If you don't have women professionals, for them to get those positions, at least they have to be on the scene. At least they have to be there. They have to be trained. And the next step is pushing them, training them in order to be good professionals, and also training them through their career. So I think that's why we don't find, or we find few women at high position or high level in the energy sector.
Thank you. And Tabby, are there any reflections you want to share with us?
I think Carol's covered most of it on the utility side of things. Necessarily my area of expertise, but yeah, I think she covered most of the points.
Okay, thank you. We have run the hour, so to thank you all for staying tuned. Just a couple of reminders on the chat box. You will see that Jay shared the link to the forum, so that if you want to join this 10 that are available for a professional career coach to support you in exploring and developing your personal brand, please do click on the link and fill in the form before the 26th of this month. Also, one of the brilliant about being a network and working with people who want to support other people, or women who want to support other women, we received 2 links about tips for introverts to network. So Jamie is also sharing over the chat. If you're interested, and do click on them. And with this, I would like to first ask Carol to share with us any final thoughts or advice that she may have with our audience before we say goodbye. And in Tabby, I'll do the same with you in a bit. Carol?
Anna, sorry, I had a little issue.
Okay, so yeah. Did you hear the question?
Yes, the question. I believe it's very important for African women to be more engaged, to be more committed, and to work hard in every sector, and especially with the issue, which is the major issue in most African countries. We need more women to transform the continent. We need more women to be involved, to be committed, in order to change the policies, in order to change to be more involved, to change the way the projects are built and designed, and also for the decision, the level of decision. It's very, very important to have as more women as possible.
Thank you. And Tabby, final words of advice to our audience?
Yeah, so I mean, I think first of all, continue participating in networks like Women in Africa. I think you guys are doing great work. I think this webinar. Yeah, I mean, I think kind of Mandela's birthday. His birthday was yesterday, and there's this tagline going around saying "Be the legacy," and so I think really like just dream big, fail often, but never stop learning, and then yeah, try to give back where you can and surround yourself with like-minded people who inspire you, and I think yeah, you'll be okay. That's my little 2 cents.
Thank you. I think I our audience in sharing that. It's been an absolute pleasure to listen to the 2 of you, to your candid stories. And I mean, we look forward to continue working and also learning from you now and in the future. To our panelists, and Tabby, Carol, our thanks also for joining the pilot website. To our audience, also our thanks for tuning in. And as we know you're in learning more about personal brand, our career coach has developed an exercise that we would also share with you, so that if you want to practice at home, that you can do that. You will see that the exercises tie very much to the presentations and the way that both Carol and Tabby have reflected on their personal brand. So we do hope that the package will support you further in discovering and strengthening your brand. We want to thank Power Africa for the support that they provide to the network. And a reminder that the video of this webinar is going to be made available, though you would need to give us time to process that and upload it. And once we upload the webinar, we'll also make available all the resources that you have been receiving throughout the webinar on that page. So I want to again thank you everyone, and we hope you tune in to the next webinar, which is going to be broadly on messaging. So once you have your brand, how you sell your product and yourself. So thank you very much, and looking forward to talking to you very much. Thank you.